Check us out to hear the latest on life in the volunteer state. Yvonnca and her guests discuss everything from life, love, and business with a Tennessee flair.
It's a Tennessee thing!
Always relatable, always relevant, and always a good time. This is Talkin Tennessee, and now your host, Yvonnca.
This episode is brought to you by Turning Knox Rental, your go-to for event rental services. We have selfie machines, 360 photo machines, and food servicing machines that you can rent out to give your parties the best experience possible. Get the TKR experience with Turning Knox Rental. You can find us at www.turningknoxrental.com.
Welcome back to Talkin Tennessee with Yvonnca. I am your host, and I am here this week with Matt Ryerson from United Way. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Viewers, United Way is such a great organization, and I was talking to someone from the United Way, Blake, and my good friend, and he said, I've got a great person that you need to talk to that can tell you all about United Way. So I said, okay, so we're going to get you over here.
All right.
So welcome, and let's get started.
Yeah, thanks.
So who is Matt?
Yeah, that's it's such a great question, and it's funny how sometimes that's the hardest question to answer.
It is.
You know, I grew up in northern Ohio, outside Cleveland, very blue-collar Rust Belt.
Okay.
My dad worked in a factory, my uncle worked in a factory, my grandmother worked in a factory, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. That kind of represents a lot of the culture and experience that I grew up with. Very blue-collar, hardworking folks. Went to college, moved away.
Okay.
Bounced around the Midwest, started my professional career in the YMCA. So started off in the nonprofit world.
Yes.
So really got my feet wet and got a really good experience in the YMCA as kind of the start and the launch of my nonprofit career. Actually, the Y brought me to Tennessee in 1998. Right at the end of 98, I moved here for a job in Chattanooga at the YMCA there. And then I've been in East Tennessee ever since, joined the United Way Network about 15 years ago almost.
Okay.
And I was at a United Way in Southeast Tennessee before I took this job here at the United Way in Knoxville 4 years ago. And so now I've talked about my jobs. I don't know if that really, it's not, that's probably not.
But that's still you.
Yeah, it is.
It is you, because whatever you're passionate about, that's a part of you.
Yeah.
That type of thing. So I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with just a part of us has to be, for me, it has to be the woman, who I am, what I believe in, what I'm passionate about. That's what makes me, and that's what makes you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Tell me why you love this community.
Oh gosh, I moved to Southeast Tennessee at the time, but fell in love with East Tennessee. I love Tennessee as a whole, and I love the saying, I stole this saying from somebody. They said, I wasn't born here, but I got here as quick as I could.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a real good one.
It applies to me, where I just fell in love with the mountains. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the food, if I'm honest.
Yes.
It was much better than where I was coming from, yeah. And so just fell in love with so many aspects. But, a big part of it was the people. And there is a different type of person, and this probably isn't true in the South as well, but in East Tennessee for sure, there's a spirit of loving your neighbor that truly exists. And I'm not saying we're perfect at it, but
East Tennessee loves their neighbors.
They really do. They show up, and in the last 25 years, I've had some hard times like anybody else. Man, you got people in your life that pour in you, and people that you don't know will pour into you. It's that love for me that has made me love Tennessee.
Yeah, I'll say this. I totally understand that, because I shared with you off camera our story with David getting sick 10 years ago, and literally we were doing a cookout for our church the next day. Well, the day before, David gets sick. And he's just complaining about abdomen pain.
Yeah.
We go to the hospital. We're thinking we're going to be there 2 days. within 24 hours, they was on life support. So I didn't have time to plan how I was going to stop my life and take care of my husband, because I went in with him and I didn't come back out for 5.5 months. And so it took this community to come together for me, and truly they loved to own my family. They made sure my kids were fed. They made sure my grass was cut. They made sure my house was attended to, that type of thing. People brought food to the hospital. People came to pray with me daily. So I understand where you're coming from when you say the love of the people, the love of East Tennessee. Why you love East Tennessee, because it's unmatched to me.
I agree.
There's a lot of places, not saying there's not great places in the United States, but it's something about East Tennessee that it's unmatched. The cost of living, yes, it's went up, but it's still not like other states. Even the crime rate is way lower than other areas. I think of the different things that God has really, spared us from. East Tennessee, plus we have the Vols. I mean, come on. Go Vols. Everybody say go Vols.
That's right.
Even though we lost last week, we still say go Vols. So let me ask you this. In nonprofit, what made you have a love for nonprofit? Did anything happen to you? Or did you or someone in your family? Or did you just say, you know what? You went and got a job at YMCA and just fell in love with it. What was it?
It's funny you said, my mom just passed away. Just a few weeks ago. Thank you for that. And before she passed, I talked to her about this very question. I said, why do I have this? Where did this come from?
Yes.
And I said, I asked, because as a kid you don't know, you're not really aware, but I asked my mom, did you and Dad volunteer? Did you give philanthropically? And she just looked at me and said, we were poor.
Yeah. We didn't have anything to give.
We weren't giving anything away.
Yes.
In fact, a funny story with that, we had a wood burning stove in my house. This is Northern Ohio, up on Lake Erie. We had a wood burning stove in my house, no furnace, until I was 15 years old. Now my son thinks we were like pioneers. Right? He's like, that's not even true. But my dad and my brother and I would go out and cut wood in the summer and stack wood, and we'd burn that wood all winter long to keep the house warm. And I just thought it was my parents being cheap.
Yes.
Right? I was like, come on, you could fix the furnace. But it was really a major cost savings that they needed at the time. So when I asked my mom that, she said, I don't know where you got it from. Where I think it came from, when I came out, like you said, I needed a job when I graduated college, and I was hiring, and I took the job. But it was this opportunity that I saw, and I'll give you one perfect example of this. I was running an after-school program, and I had sent the staff home because there were just a couple kids, and the last kid, this young girl, I still remember her name was Whitney. And Whitney was the last one again, and Whitney was always the last one. And they were supposed to be picked up, I can't remember, 6 o'clock, something like that.
Yes.
And the mom rolls in at like 6:10. Now we're supposed to charge them a late fee or something. I never did that. But I was agitated, right? I'm probably 25 years old. I had a place somewhere to go.
Yes,
right? I was like,
exactly.
She
Especially
came in,
at 25.
Yes, and she came in, and she probably sensed that, which is a real moment for me. But also, she started crying. And she said, I have this job that I get off at 6 o'clock, and I come over here as fast as I can, because my boss won't give me any relief. He gives me no grace. And as a single mother, I am just trying. So thank you so much for your willingness to stay late. And she's being kind and generous, and she's got tears running down her face. And I got this cute little girl that is getting to go home with mom, and she got to do homework with me. So she's not going home and doing homework with mom. She gets to spend time with mom and have dinner with mom. And it hit me then, I'm doing something special.
Yes.
I get a job that I get to offer this to other people. And I think that's the day, if I can connect it to one day, that's the day that I realized I have this blessing. I have this opportunity.
It's like the light went off in your head. Like, oh my goodness, this is what I'm called to do.
Yes, and in fairness, I didn't line myself up for it. I didn't train myself up. I lucked into it, or God placed me.
But that's what purpose is.
That's right.
If you think about it, it's not something that you plan. It just happens.
Yeah.
And once it happens, then you're on the quest to perfect
yes.
it and do more of it. You know, I tell people all the time, my family's a giver, and I said, when I die, I don't want people to remember me as this great realtor. I don't want them to remember me as, oh, she made a lot of money, or she did a lot of it. I want people to remember that I made a difference in somebody's life, and that they can take whatever I taught them and they take that and apply it to someone else's life.
Yeah.
And I want my legacy to be that if nothing else, I was a giver and I gave to my community, you know, that type thing. Yeah. And I showed other people how to give to their community. I don't want it to be like career driven. I want my legacy to be more giving to my community.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what brought you to United Way?
You know, it's an interesting story. I was working for a federal grant, and the grant it was a limited time window, so it was about a 3-year grant. And at the end of that grant, we had allocated a lot of dollars. And about that time, the local United Way had received a significant injection of money for an endowment, and they accepted that money, but they didn't have a process to put that money back into the community. And I just so happened to be in this job where I was allocating money in a very innovative, unique strategy driven by the grant itself, but I got to be the main leader of that at the time. And so the United Way reached out and said, hey, we've watched what you've been doing with this work. We'd love a similar model in this endowment that we're creating. Would you be willing to come over? And it started off as like contract work. And then it evolved into a growing opportunity, and the board ultimately the CEO, my predecessor at that United Way, was getting close to retirement. So they reached out to me and said, when she retires, would you be willing to take on this role? And I was honored,
probably
excited.
Floored.
I was, and especially because honestly, at that point, I didn't know much about the United Way. I really didn't. Historically, I thought they were kind of a flow through, and so I was like, I don't know, what do you want this to look like? Because I think I could come up with some creative projects that we could do, but it's a little outside the norm for what United Way might traditionally do. And they said, we'd love to hear it.
And you're like, I'm willing to come and do it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So speaking of United Way and you not really knowing what United Way does.
Yeah.
Can you tell my viewers, I see a lot that United Way does in the community.
Yeah.
But tell me and my viewers, what is the mission for United Way?
Yeah.
What is the make of United Way? What do y'all believe in?
Yeah, I love this question. And you know, it's funny, this organization's been around 100 years.
Okay.
So over 100 years, it has gotten a lot of particular impressions or perceptions related to it. Some are true or some are not, but that's the nature of any long-standing institution. And so traditionally, United Way has been kind of a fundraising organization that then allocated those funds to nonprofit partners. That is a great mission.
Yes.
Well, as technology has changed, as nonprofits have changed, the need for one organization to raise all that money and then allocate it out has become less so, because if you want to give, to example, for Boys and Girls Club, great organization, they have a website, they have a team ready to take your money. You don't really need a middleman. And so the evolution of the United Way now, and to answer that question, I usually say we do 3 things.
Okay.
We build leaders, we mobilize resources, and we close gaps. And when I say that, somebody say, well, do you work on housing? And I'd say, absolutely. We try and build leaders, we mobilize resources, and we close gaps. And to us, I think so many of the challenges we see in the community are barriers or distance or gaps from where I'm at to my goals in life. I want economic stability, or better stated, I want economic mobility. I want to be in a better place, and I want my kids to be in a better place.
Right.
How do I get there? When I look at my world, I might have a barrier of lack of reliable transportation. I might have a lack of childcare. I might have unstable housing, or in some cases, I don't have stability in my food. You know, my pantry by the end of the month is empty. I got to budget or ration that. And so when you look at those barriers, that can become a complicated web of prevention from me and my goals. And so at the United Way, through a range of partners, and products, we try to kind of cut through those barriers and walk with those families on that journey to close those gaps and find them ultimately their goals and beyond. Not just for them, but generationally for the families as they are today, but for that next generation as well.
Got you. So tell me this, when it comes to United Way, them depending on donations and grants and government funding, tell me how that works.
Yeah, so
please.
This is a really interesting time, and I've started kind of studying trends in philanthropy and what's around the corner and what's down the road. 100 years we've raised, who knows how much money, but probably close to $500 million raised.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Now the United Way really gets its name from the spirit in which we raise money typically, which means we don't rely on any one person or one grant to cover all the costs for the community. The best way to raise money is in a united way. So if we go to a company of 1,000 people, and 1,000 people, none of them could afford to give $10,000. In fact, maybe in that company, not one of them could give $1,000. But if 1,000 people give $10, that's $10,000.
That's true.
And so that united way of putting our resources together for greater good is the typical, more traditional approach that we've used. Now, we have started diversifying our revenue, which means we are applying for more grants. There are a lot of grants out there, and we love bringing those home to Knoxville. And we do it in a collaborative manner and make sure a lot of nonprofits are a part of that journey. And so we try to make sure we're bringing in money to meet the needs of our community. Now, the needs are huge, right?
Yes, the needs are huge, and they're getting even bigger.
They are.
With everything that's going on in the economy and with things being so pricey right now.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many families that are really struggling.
Yeah.
They really are. And, I try to tell people, and I try to use my platform to say this, some people will sit and say, well, people need to go to work, and there's a lot of people that go to work every day. And viewers, I want to stress this. There's so many people that go to work every day, really, truly are hard workers, have a work ethic, unbelievable, but they just don't make enough money to spread across the whole family, and so that's why I try my best to use my platform to uplift those families and say, you know what, I see you, I hear you, and I understand that, you're doing as much as you can, and sometimes you may need that help.
Yeah.
And that's where United Way does come in, because United Way does a lot in our community, and they want to bring families together, and they want to bring the stress off of families, all over, that type thing. And that's why I wanted to bring United Way on, because I'm like, it's like what your name is, United. You bring the way together. The United is what God would want us to do. He would want us to be strong. He would want us to come together as one and say, hey, how can we help our brother and sister?
It's like, I think it's 1 Corinthians where Jesus talks about, it's Paul at this point. Paul is writing about, maybe it is, forgive me.
No, you're fine.
But the point is, in 1 Corinthians, they talk about Church of Paul versus Church of Apollos, and the commentary is saying, you're not in Apollos' church. You're not in Paul's church. We are one. We're
one.
And right now in this world, which is very divided, I feel like we've got a message that's really important to the world, that together we're much stronger than we are as individuals.
We are.
And we could use a little bit more unity. So to be honest with you, I love the work that we're doing, because I feel like I've had comments, people reach out, hey, are you going to speak against some politician? Are you going to... I said, that's really not our work. Our work is how do we bring people together?
And see, that's my family, because I don't know if you looked me up or anything like that, but I'll say this. I have a black child. I have a white child. And when it comes to our family, we're of love. It doesn't matter what color you are. We could care less. It's about loving you and doing what's right. And I tell people in the world, I'm like, you know what? Color, yes, is color. Are we two different colors? Yes. someone told me the other day, said, I don't see color, and I said, don't say that. And the person was like, well, why are you saying that? And I said, because if you don't see color, you don't see me. I said, but I knew what the person meant by it. And I said, this is what you say. Say, color doesn't affect me. Color doesn't apply to my way of thinking, because you should always see there is a difference, but that doesn't mean that we can't make a difference together. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So when you say, I don't see color, that means you don't see me, because there is a difference.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that difference has to be magnified or separated, that type of thing. It's unity. We need to unify ourselves with Christ and with our community.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Yeah. You're a runner.
I am a runner, yes.
Yeah. So tell me this. I wish I was a runner. But tell me this. How does being a runner, how does that, your everyday thing with United Way and what you do, how does that come together with you being a runner?
Yeah, so I am not typically a disciplined person. Okay. Like, that's just not my nature. And I suspect most of your listeners probably hear that or feel that, right? Yes. They're like, man, I don't want to do these things.
Yes, correct.
Well, about 10 years ago, I weighed a little more than 300 pounds. Yeah, and I was like, this is, the way I always frame it is, we have 4 kids. My wife would, get pregnant and in the pregnancy gain weight. Yes. And I would gain weight with her as a sympathy support.
Yes.
The difference was she would lose the weight and I just kept adding on. And so after 4 kids, I had an extra probably 100 pounds on me. Yes. And I said, I've got to figure something out. And I wasn't real disciplined, but I was very goal driven. And so I set up, like a lot of people, I want to run a half marathon and then maybe a marathon down the way. And so I started training for that. And what happened for me was, it was best if I could do it every day. If it just became a part of my daily habit, then I knew I would get it done.
And that's what doctors say. You have to set something that you're going to do every day.
Absolutely. And so for me, running became my everyday thing, just like brushing my teeth. And I didn't even allow myself time much to think about it. It was just something I was going to commit to. It was hard, and it still is hard. It can be difficult. I'm not always motivated, but I am disciplined now.
Yes.
And that discipline really does translate to my work, where there are parts of my day, I suspect, we were talking about the hustle required for your work.
Well, say yes.
There are probably days where 2:00 in the afternoon, you're like, man, I just call it a day, right? But you got these 3 or 4 things that really needed to be done today. That's a moment of decision about your discipline. And for me, knowing that I can do it, that I have done it in other parts of my life, does translate for me to go, no, push through, knock out these 3 or 4 things, follow up on these emails, make this phone, whatever you have to do to finish the day strong. And so it has transformed my work ethic and how I really face the world, and especially when it's a hard thing, whatever that hard thing is. When I meet with an employee, it's going to be a difficult conversation. I meet with a partner, and I've got a set expectation. That's going to be awkward. Whatever it is, I tend to have a lot more confidence now because I know deep in my mind I can do hard things.
Yes. So running in your life, how is that really, it's giving discipline, it's giving you discipline, but has it given a peace to you, a totally different feeling, that type thing?
I am not fast, and I don't win races, but it does. There's something, the way I describe, somebody had asked me about this at lunch today. And I said, running is like a truth serum. And what I mean by that is when I get running and it starts getting hard, like the noise of the world that we all experience has to slide away, because your mind can't stress and worry and think about the appointment tomorrow when it hurts and it's breathing hard, and it starts focusing on the hill you're on, right?
Correct.
And in that, when you get done with the run, it's like the truth serum, it's just stripped away all those false voices that we've all got, right? That we all have those whispers, you can't do it, you're not good enough, it has stripped all those away. And when I walk back into my driveway after running that 2, 3, 4 miles, I'm like, I did do it. And I do feel good. And I have a whole different spirit. I have a different outlook on the day. And all of a sudden, whatever problems and noise I had, it's kind of slipped away. and it's kind of almost a resetting. So I do almost all my runs in the morning because I feel I walk into my day when I take my kids to school. I'm in a better state of mind. I'm not thinking about everything I have to do. I'm thinking about that moment with my kids.
And I bet you after that run, confidence, everybody doesn't have confidence every day. You have those days of what you were saying, I can't do this or whatever. But I bet you after you run, it's like you're pumped.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, okay, you want to get in the office and you want to show your employees and everybody around you or whatever, we can do this. We can fight. We can, do for the community, that type of thing. Versus if you did it after work, it probably, you wouldn't apply it as much.
I agree.
Do you agree?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. I ran this morning, and then we have a Monday morning team meeting.
Okay.
We call it our team stand-up. It's 15 minutes. Just pop in. I usually give a small pep talk of some sort.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, most of those have developed on my run. And it's funny, the way you even framed it is the way I end up communicating. When I come in, I'm on fire, right? And a lot of it is that energy's been flowing, the blood's pumping. I'm coming in not on a Monday morning.
You coming in hot.
I'm coming in hot. Yeah, I love it.
You're coming in hot. So tell me this, when it comes to the sport of running and you bring the running into nonprofit, okay, on a larger scale, how does those two things come hand in hand?
Yeah.
Tell me that.
I use it as a metaphor for so much. In fact, I was talking to my team today about this trajectory, this project we have, grant related, that's 3 to 5 years out. And I said and I literally, and many people use this metaphor, it's a marathon, right? Look, we're not going to come flying out and then burn out, right?
Yes.
Let's ease into this. Let's warm up. Let's stretch our legs. Let's stretch our minds. Let's think about this and how do we grow into this in a healthy way that we can maintain a level of excellence the entire time, rather than what I might be prone to, which is come out flying and then gassing out, right? Burning out. Rather, let's look at this marathon type training and say, how do we plug away at this every day and get better every day? I think it's a great
That
metaphor.
makes sense. So when it comes to United Way as a whole, what would you tell my viewers, what sets Knoxville United Way apart from the other ones?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this. I'm very proud of this.
Okay.
This is hokey, and we talked about it a little bit before we started the podcast about the spirit that exists here in Knoxville, but in Tennessee as a whole.
Yes.
Especially the name of this podcast. The way I always frame it is we earned the title the volunteer state. That wasn't a branding group that got together and gave it to us. It was the spirit of the people that live here, and I believe that, and I feel it. And so when you look at, and by the way, every county has a United Way designated to it. So there's independent United Ways all over the country.
Yes.
They all do their own things. But Knoxville is often held pretty high in the spirit of giving, the spirit of philanthropy that's out there, the partnership, and also some of the unique projects that we've done. We're partnering with Knox County Schools to work on community schools and really support families that have barriers that prevent academic success, whether it's housing instability, food instability, like we talked about, transportation, any number of things. We try to work on those issues, remove those barriers, so when the kids get to school, they can focus on school and teachers can teach, and they're not case managers. And
they can be kids.
Yes. And so,
true childhood. And
that's right. So when you look at Knoxville, I think there's a lot more of that energy that's happening, and that spirit really comes out in the program and the work that we do every day.
Okay, that makes total sense. And I do agree with, we did earn the name volunteer, and a lot of people volunteer every day. You may not see them on a platform, you may not see them on a TV or on the radio or the billboards or whatever, but there are so many people that are, that are not on those platforms, but they do so much, and so for everybody out there, if you're that person that has never, got your accolade or the recognition, let me be the one and Matt be the one to say, thank you for building up this community. Thank you for loving this community and loving the people in the community and just doing good things. I truly believe that God did not put any of us on earth to be complacent. God didn't. I have a thing about my Facebook Live that I say, Matt, is get off the couch and do something. And the reason why I say that is it's not to down, it's more to say, you know what, as long as you stay off the couch, you're doing something.
Yeah.
You move around, you know, you can go to your neighbor's house that say she's elderly and she doesn't have any kids. You can go to her house and, you know, pick up her medicine for her, pick up groceries for her. It doesn't have to be something big that you volunteer to do. It can be something very small that you think is small, but it's so much bigger to your neighbor.
Yeah.
It's so much bigger to the person that may not even know you. You can do things in your community. Come volunteer at the United Way. You know, help the United Way, help more people in their community, that type thing. Do you agree?
Yeah, I love that. In fact, we have a phrase that we adopted. A friend of mine shared it with me once, and it just really stuck in my head. And it relates to even what you were discussing earlier about race and relations and understanding and avoiding division and trying to come together unified. But the phrase is, proximity changes perspective. Meaning, I come into your house, I come into your studio, I get to know you a little better. All of a sudden, my perspective changes dramatically.
Totally.
Right? And
I
so,
agree.
if you have a neighbor that, and I say this to my wife all the time, if we start feeling a little negative feelings about a neighbor, like they did something, they parked out in front of their house or on the street or whatever, it kind of irritates me. The first thing I should do is just go over and talk with him.
Have a conversation.
Yeah, not go over and complain and yell at him, but really go over and say, hey, how's it going? I saw a car parked out in the street, and they're like, oh, you know, my hot water heater broke. I'm flooded. It's just been a nightmare. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm sorry.
And you just never know what someone's going through.
Yes.
That is a good point.
And now
that's a totally good point.
And them parking in the street's not even a big deal. And now I feel sympathy. Like, I'm sorry you're going through. That's miserable.
And you can help your neighbor by, you know, just listening.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's not something you have to act on, or you go spend money, or you go and do something big. Sometimes just letting someone vent for a minute, get it out, and then they feel better. Be that person.
Yes.
I'm really big on energy, and I was off the camera, I was talking to Matt about, you know, I'm big on energy, and he's big on energy too. Be that person that your energy lights up the room, not dims the room.
Oh, I like that word. I like that. That's good.
Let your energy brighten the room, not dim the room. And so for the people that don't understand what I'm talking about is, be the one that walks in the room, speaks positive, and just want to bring something that people can apply to their lives, you know, something they can be happy about. I just think speaking positive things, my mom said when I was a kid, that if you start out with positive thoughts, if you speak positive thoughts out in the atmosphere, that it's going to come back to you. If you speak negative things, negative is going to come to you. So I live out my life that way. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I don't have my days that I have to check myself and, you know, and change what I'm about to say or something like that, because everybody gets frustrated or whatever. But I just think that you should be a positive force.
Yeah.
You know, and that when people speak of you, they speak in a positive way because that's what you gave them.
That's right. I mean, everybody loves an encourager. Right?
Yes.
And the truth is, we all need a cheerleader.
We do.
And so when you meet somebody on the street that's a cheerleader and you don't even know them, that's really uplifting.
Yes, and the cheerleader that you can always depend on, you know, that type thing. There are so many people in our community that, for whatever reason, may not have that cheerleader.
Yeah.
So that's why we got to be that cheerleader. And even if you don't know someone, I was at the grocery store earlier getting the things for dinner, and there was a man, and I said to him, I said, well, good morning. And he said, good morning. And he goes, oh, you're cheery. And I said, that's just me. And he said, thank you. And I looked at it and I said, "You're welcome." And he said, "We need more people like that."
Oh, he's right.
Yeah, just think about it. Just hearing someone say, "Good morning," that type thing, or "Have a good day." Yeah. We're taught that as a kid to say, "Have a good day." But sometimes husband and wives and kids and different people, we need to tell each other, "Have a good day," and really mean it. Yep. That type of thing. And then when the day's over, did you have a good day? Yeah. And even if that day was not what you wanted it to be, still turn that negative into a positive and say, "You know what, I'm still alive and God has given me more time to turn it into a positive." That's how I think. Yeah. That type of thing. I love it. Okay, so tell me this. The term toxic charity. Yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah, so this is a concept I learned probably 15 years ago. Really, when I started at the United Way, we were talking about doing a neighborhood revitalization project, and we went out and researched best practices. And there was this group in Atlanta, South Atlanta in particular, that was doing some really good neighborhood revitalization work. And so we went down and visited them. And the CEO of that nonprofit, his name was Bob Lupton, he started telling me about his philosophy on serving people. Okay. And he said, I wrote a book about it. And I was like, what? A book? And so I read the book, and I was just so inspired. And the concept comes from this idea that we so often can have kind of a savior complex where we want to give you out of your troubles. We want to just give you stuff, and I'll come in and I'll fix your problems. And look, I've lived that. I still battle that with my kids, Right. In fact, the other day, my daughter's doing math homework, and she got it wrong. And instead of showing her, I was like, no, it's just here. And I wanted to do it for her. Well, if I do her homework for her, she's not really learning the homework. Correct. Right? And so that concept really applies in life. If people are trying, and everybody is trying, scraping together a couple jobs, single mom, just trying to get by. Yes. If I go in, not sure, would an injection of money be an incredible blessing? Yes. But the reality is, what most people want is just the opportunity to do for themselves, right?
That's true.
Remove some of those barriers. So for us, the concept of toxic charity is not doing for somebody else what they can do for themselves, not trying to give somebody out of poverty, but being willing to listen and walk alongside. Now, that's hard, especially if you have resources or you have an idea of where they could go and what they could do. But just walking on that journey with them. We've been talking off camera a lot about that idea of how do you help support people. Well, so often, we think it's just give them something. In reality, it takes more and it means more to give them a piece of you.
They need tools to be able, because my thing is this, and I say this a lot, is it's great to give, but people live 365 days a year. So if you do something today, what about the other 364 days? Yes. And so it's like, okay, it's great because, I tell people in giving, I said, nonprofits, they need you to donate time, even money, regularly, once a year, twice a year, that is great. Yeah. But they need you to do things regularly because people live a regular life. Yeah. And they live every day, 365 days a year. So it's like, yes, and I just don't believe in, okay, let me make my myself feel good. Let me go over here and do something for United Way once a year. So to me, that's not being a giver.
Right.
When you do something regularly, that's being a giver.
Oh man, it's so many, and you're right on. In fact, this book, you got to get this book. I'll send it over to you. It's this great text, and it's really in that same concept that even in good intentions, we can actually accidentally hurt people if we're not careful.
Yes.
And so this whole idea of give a man a fish, not teach him to fish, right?
Yes.
Or opposite. I'm sorry.
No, I'm
teach a man a fish, not to give him a fish, right?
Yes,
because the truth is, we can feed somebody today, but the truth is they'll be hungry tomorrow.
Correct.
How do you get a person in a position where they no longer need, because the truth is it's also about our dignity. I don't want to come to you and ask for a meal every day.
No.
If you feed me, there's usually some sense of embarrassment. There's a stripping of our dignity.
It is.
But if you teach me skills and skill me up, and sometimes that takes time, but if you skill me up where I can get a job and I never have to come, that's a win for everybody. And that's really philosophically that toxic charity mentality is, how do we give to people so they can do for themselves and ultimately give to others as well? Because that's where the real joy in life comes from.
Correct.
Is when you can give and support others on their journey.
And they can do for themselves.
Yeah.
You know, that's where confidence comes from. Yep. From when you're doing for yourself, doing for your family, letting your kids see you get up, go to work, you know, and make it happen.
Yeah.
That's what makes you feel the best. So tell me this, at the United Way, what do y'all do to prevent that?
Yes.
The toxic charity. What do y'all do to prevent
Boy, so this is hard because our system is really been built on kind of a crisis style of giving. And here's what I mean by that. If we see somebody hungry, we want to feed them. If we see somebody cold, we want to clothe them. If we see somebody homeless, we want to house them. All of that is correct. It's not wrong. It's not inappropriate, but it's not the end. It shouldn't be the period. Meaning, I had this conversation with this gentleman who owns a business downtown. He said, we just need to build another shelter so that all these people will stop sleeping on the streets. And I said, but you understand, if you put them in a shelter, they're still homeless. Like that, they're not suddenly home.
I agree.
That's not a healthy environment. If we do shelter work, we then need to follow that with case management to support people on their journey to stable housing. That's where we got to do a better job. So at the United Way, we are really in our partnerships working hard to communicate that philosophy where we say, yes, look, if somebody's hungry, you do need to feed them. Because I can't think about a job or an education if my belly
if I'm hungry, correct.
But if the concept is to feed them, what comes next, right? That's not the period on the sentence. That's really the entry point.
It is.
The food, the clothing, the shelter, that's only the beginning of that journey. Now, the hard part of that is the next part of that journey is fraught with difficulties, it's disappointment, setbacks, but that's where we're really tested as humanity. Do we want to walk through the dirty part of that, where somebody in addiction relapses, where somebody who's homeless gets evicted again, somebody that's hungry a week later didn't budget appropriately and is hungry again? Those are the frustrations that can make us quit as giving spirits, but the reality is that's when we have to lean into that work. So we're constantly coaching our volunteers, our donors, and our partners, because it's really easy for us to get into that mentality of just do what they need for what's best for them. I give you one example about the power of listening. We were doing this neighborhood revitalization project, and it was in this neighborhood. I used to run this neighborhood. I was in this neighborhood all the time. I knew exactly what they needed. I knew some houses that need to be torn down. I knew a new playground. I knew exactly what they needed. So we had a community meeting, and all these folks from the community came in. We had a facilitator, and the facilitator asked the question, what would you like to see done? What's your priorities? What's important to you? And I've got my pad and paper. I'm on the side listening, but I know.
Yes.
First woman raises her hand and says, there's a pack of wild dogs that terrorizes our kids and our elderly. So nobody goes outside. This used to be a neighborhood where we spent time on each other's porches, and now everybody's scared to death because of this pack of wild dogs. And I remember going, that didn't make my list. Pack of wild dogs.
You're like, that's
I had no idea because I didn't live there. It wasn't my neighborhood.
Exactly. And you wasn't being affected by it.
That's right. Next hand goes up. The person says, the other problem is we don't want our kids running the streets because there's no speed limit signs. And this is one of these marginalized communities, been gone, a lot. Right. And so when a speed limit sign down, or a stop sign for that matter, the city didn't put a new one up. So this whole neighborhood didn't have a single street sign. And despite the fact I ran this every morning, I didn't live there, I didn't notice that stuff.
Yes.
So the first two most important things on their list didn't even make my list. And I remember walking out of that meeting going, I got to start doing more listening and not projecting what I think needs to be done, even though some of my ideas might have been fine. A lot of it was driven by that neighborhood. And so the truth is, the work we did from that point forward was, hey, we got some ideas, but the truth is, what do you need? What do you want? What do you want your neighborhood to look like, and how do we help you get there?
Yes.
So they developed a homeowners association in this neighborhood. They went to city council and asked for street signs to be put up. They have done all the work. Now, did we walk alongside them and coach them and resource them up? Absolutely. And when I go back to our mission, we build leaders. We help build leaders in that neighborhood. We mobilize resources. We brought training and tools that they could use. And ultimately, we bridge gaps where they start feeling more empowered. Hey, gosh, we can do a lot of this on our own. And they were. It didn't cost a lot of money. It just cost a little time and energy. And most importantly, for us to take a more humble spirit and listen.
Yes. And it's a valid point. We do need to listen more, because you never know what is in other people's head if you don't take out the time to allow them to vent and say, well, not just vent, just talk.
Yeah.
And that's why I say with my podcast, with all my guests, I'm like, it's just a conversation with me. I don't want anybody to feel like, oh my gosh, this, I'm going in to get an interview. No, you're having a conversation with me.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you're saying, is just listen and see what you can build together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me this, what do you think in nonprofit, what do you think the landscape would be in Knoxville to the national level in the next 10 to 15 years?
That's a great question. I love studying this stuff.
Okay.
There's a professor over at UT, Dr. Bill Fox, who's a futurist, which I love that title, by the way. I love that. I don't know how you get that degree or what that work is, but futurist, looking forward and seeing the trends, right? I think it's really interesting landscape around giving, and I think also in the nonprofit management style, right? AI is going to play a role. I don't know what that is, but grant writing, marketing, I think AI will drive a lot of this in the future.
Yes.
I think also we're seeing giving trends spiral down. What I mean by that is about 20 years ago, they did a survey and they said self-reported households identifying as giving to a charity. Well, it was a broad-based national survey. 68% of households said they gave to a charity. 20 years later, 48% say they give to a charity.
Okay, say that one more time. 68%.
68% of households surveyed. So it was a broad-based survey. Probably 3,000 households were called and surveyed. 68%, when asked the question, do you give to charity? 68% of those households said, yes, we give to charity. 20 years later, now just last year, 48%.
So we're down 20%.
Down 20%.
Wow.
Yeah, less than half of households give to charity. Yeah, and so what you're seeing is where there's a decline in giving, there's an increase in government grant making. Now, I don't know if that's a healthy trend.
Right.
It might not be bad. Some people would argue, oh, you're paying taxes, so you're kind of giving to charity in a more indirect route and let the government grant make and then charities do that work.
20%.
Yeah, in 20 years.
That's a lot.
Yes. And so, that's a concerning trend. So what does that mean from a revenue perspective? Now, I will also say here in Tennessee, and certainly in Knoxville, we're seeing that trend, but not at that degree, which I think goes back to the spirit that exists in East Tennessee, that we're very philanthropic in nature. We tend to give back when we have the opportunity. In fact, I've had people that give until it hurts, and they're in a financial position they shouldn't even be giving, but they are just so...
That's in their heart.
Yes, they feel it and they give back. Yes. Now that's awesome, and I tell my team those stories because I'm like, this is the burden and responsibility we have.
Yes.
We can't joke around. We don't waste money on this because these people believe in this work is making a difference, and we got to squeeze that penny to make it go as far as possible. But I think those giving trends really have, and then you look at some of the problems and some of the solutions, right? So transportation is a great example. What does the future look like? Well, Dr. Fox would say 20 years from now, very few of us will actually be driving. That it'll be automated vehicles for a lot of us.
Yes.
So if we think about transportation as a barrier to work, so I live in a neighborhood, I don't have reliable transportation, I'd like to apply for that job 10 minutes away, but the reality is I don't know if I can get there every day and I'll get fired. So I don't apply for that job. Now, if we start creating transportation systems that are more reliable, more consistent, I don't have to own a vehicle, but somehow I have public transportation that can easily get me to and from.
Yes.
All of a sudden, my job opportunities open significantly. It doesn't have to be in walking distance. I can travel X amount of distance every day because the transportation problem has been solved for me. Those are all things I'd love to dig into. I think the future is bright, even with the downward giving trends, because I believe solutions are being more actively pursued as opposed to, we were really good at putting Band-Aids on big wounds in the nonprofit world, in the charity world, in the church world. We go overseas, we do ministry work, we do mission trips, or our work here in our communities, our neighborhoods, oftentimes are Band-Aid related, which means we're going to have to go back and re-bandage that over and over and over again. I think the turn has been, how do we fix this problem? If this is a big wound, what's the deep surgery we have to do to fix this so they don't need a Band-Aid a year from now, 2 years from now? And so that philosophical shift gives me hope.
Yeah, so the future is going to be brighter because we're going to pray for it to be brighter. And then we're going to highly recommend people to get involved. So my next question for you is, now that you know about nonprofits and you're in the administration part of it, do you recommend people to get involved and apply for those positions? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love it. So I would say, if you're out there listening to this and you're like, I'm looking for a potential career change, nonprofit world, first of all, it probably isn't at the market rate of most for-profit jobs, but I'll also say it's not far off. Like a lot of people say, I'm going to go poor, I'm going to go broke. That's not true. There's some good paying nonprofit jobs.
There is some good ones.
Now, it's also not all, boy, every day I solve somebody's problems, and there's a lot of heartbreak in these jobs. You go home and you carry that weight as well.
Correct.
But I tell you, at the end of the year, when you look back, you can generally feel like, man, I've made a big difference. And I would say take a step even further. If you're like, I love my occupation, I love my job, I don't want to give it up, but I do want to get more engaged, I would say find that nonprofit that does work that you're passionate about and ask them if they need a volunteer, because the answer will be yes. They do need you. Get connected. Because
and nonprofits always need volunteers.
Desperately.
Always need volunteers, always need someone to have the heart of giving, and I tell people this too, because sometimes people say, well, it's all about money. No, it's not. If most people that really, really work in volunteering in nonprofits and all that will tell you it's not all money. Now, I will say, organizations need money because you have to. You got to pay the bills, and you've got to have money reserves to be able to give to the community. Yeah. It just doesn't come out of the air, so you have to think about that. But there's a lot of organizations that just need people to volunteer, get your hands dirty. That's my saying is, it's great to give money, but get your hands dirty as well. Yeah. Go volunteer, go serve. Serve the food, go whatever organization needs. You have to ask, what do they need? What area? And that's how you find your place. So let me ask you this. If you could snap your fingers and make a change in this community.
Oh, gosh.
I know it's maybe a hard question, but if you could snap your fingers and say, this is what I'd like to change in our community, what would it be?
Gosh, I really wish we would have beat Bama last week.
Yes.
No,
yes.
I wouldn't snap my fingers.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I think all of us were stuck.
Yeah, we all agree on that one. Look, all these problems are highly complicated, very different. What I love about this question is it's never this easy. You can't snap your fingers. It's not a silver bullet.
Correct.
The housing crisis, though,
it's bad.
And you live this, right? I mean,
every day.
This is at every level. And I'm not,
You're right.
The homeless population is terrible. But it's all crunched on every level. And I would love to see, and look, I understand the complications of the housing stock availability. I understand that the rental availability is like 1%.
It's wild.
It is a difficult situation. And I tell you, it makes anything else hard. If I'm not sure where I'm sleeping this weekend, it's really hard for me to focus on anything except where my kids and I are going to sleep this weekend, right? So if I could snap my fingers and today said everybody in this community has access and availability to safe and secure and affordable housing,
yes,
that would
be awesome.
Oh, it would catapult, and not that it fixes
our
other
county
problems.
commissioner was on my podcast 2 weeks ago, John Shoemaker, and he was saying that was his thing. He said the housing crisis is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he said, and it's very sad to see families, can't find affordable housing. More families are having come together 2 or 3 families in one household.
Yeah.
That type thing. So I agree with you there. If we could work that out. I just tell everybody, hold on. Just hold on and just try your best to look for the bright light and trust God that He's going to get you through. And I know that's easier said than done. I know this, but I'm just a firm believer that He will provide.
Yeah.
That type thing, because it's sad when you see a first-time home buyer. I go through this when I see a first-time home buyer literally go get pre-approved, lines up everything correctly, but still can't afford the payment. They can get it pre-approved, but the payment is just exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah.
It really is. So that is a good one.
That's a big one.
That is. So let me ask you this. If your career went down a different path, where would you be today?
Wow. It's funny. You have dreams. Growing up, I wanted to be a professional baseball player. But this career did not get in the way of that career. My skill set was the problem with that career. I loved sports, and what probably took me to the why was I was still around youth sports, and I really enjoyed that. Now my career evolved into working with at-risk kids and youth programming, and then on and on. But I think if I were to go back and the YMCA wasn't a track into nonprofits, it probably would have been a track into some type of sport management career. In fact, some of my college education was focused on sport management. I did an internship in my college athletic department. And I really enjoyed that. I liked being around it. High energy people with very driven, type A. So I kind of like the spirit of that. I suspect that's where I would have been. Or my wife might say, I like to talk so much, I might have started a podcast or something. So
that could be it.
That's my next career. There you go.
So tell me this. If I said, okay, I want you to pitch United Way to my followers.
Yeah.
What would you say about United Way? Why should anyone pick United Way to get involved with?
Yeah. To me, there are so many great nonprofits. So I truly don't look at it as a competitive environment, but what's different about the United Way is our broad-based mission. Meaning, when I say build leaders, mobilize resources, and bridge gaps, you could say, well, is that housing? The answer is yes. Is it childcare? Yes. It's all of those things. And we have great partners that we work with to help solve those problems. So from an introduction standpoint, if you're like, I want to help people, but I don't know specifically what I want, it is such a great launching pad to come in and really experience where your money goes, the impact it has, and we have lots of volunteer experiences where you get a front row seat to the work that's happening, and then you can follow that passion. So if you decide, hey, education is really my thing, you can get launched in that direction and tied to another nonprofit, because we have a stable of over 100 nonprofit partners doing incredible work. So it's a great entry point. It's a great connection to the work, and it ultimately gives you a really good view. And it goes back to that phrase I shared with you. Proximity changes perspective. You really want to know the hurt, the pain, the suffering in our community, but more importantly, how you can help. United Way is a great place to start.
There you go. So my last question. What's next for Matt and his family? We know what Matt is going to do for United Way and what you work hard to do every day for this community. But what is Matt? What's the next thing for you and your family?
I may get emotional about this one.
Okay.
You're going to make me cry. What was that movie where the interviewer always makes, you're not going to make me cry?
Yes.
You know, my son, so we have 4 kids. Our oldest is our only son.
What is your wife's name?
Heather.
Heather.
And so...
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Heather. He is 17. He's a senior.
Okay.
That puts us at like the edge of this whole new chapter.
Yes.
Where we were thinking about fall break next year. And my wife said, oh, Jackson, our son, probably won't be able to go with us because he'll be at college. And there was this moment where I was like, what? Because we have been very, especially COVID did something that drew our family together and we're very tight. And so this idea that one of them is going to fly the coop and go on and start developing his adult life is exciting, thrilling. I know you experienced it's great, but at the same time for us as parents, it's this big shift. So I would say the next 8-10 months while he's still in our house, it's going to be very family experience heavy, where we're going to do a lot together while we have this time, because we know, and that's not a bad thing, this chapter will end and we'll move on and we'll do stuff with our 3 daughters, but I think we're going to just really enjoy the ride for his senior year and into next summer.
I can totally understand that, because I know Jane just went to high school and like a month and a half before I was really emotional about it. My husband, he was good. He's like, he's just going to high school. He wasn't like graduating. So it was like, but it's still, to me, as a mom, I was like, but he's my last.
Yeah.
He's going to high school. It's different. You know what I'm saying? It's totally different. You know, that type thing. And my husband said the other day, he was like, I get it.
Yeah.
He said, I totally get it. Because you stop and think, your kids are growing up.
Yeah.
It's going to be totally different in your house, you know, that type thing. And we're a close-knit family, so just like yours is. And so thinking about Jaden going to high school, you know, what all comes with that, I was just like really emotional.
Yes.
So I can totally understand where you would be when you're thinking about college, you know, that type thing. But I'll tell you this, I really enjoyed this interview. And I thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been a blast.
Thank you. Thank you. And everybody, please, please, please go on the website. What is United Way's? Is it?
Yep. UWGK, as in United Way Greater Knoxville, UWGK.org.
Go on the website. Get involved. You know, pick up the phone if you have a question. Yep. I just have a feeling he's got a great staff. You know, I've always believed if the head of anything is, if their energy is positive, it trickles down on their employees. And I know with a shadow of a doubt that Matt has great employees because you are great. Come back.
I will. For sure. What are you doing tomorrow?
Yeah, he said, what are you doing tomorrow? So tune in every Friday at 4 to Talkin Tennessee with Yvonnca. I'm your host, and have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to Talkin Tennessee with Yvonnca. Watch out for our weekly episodes from the First Family of Real Estate, and check us out on the web, www.YvoncaSalesRealEstate.com. See our videos on Yvonca's YouTube channel, or find us on Facebook under Yvonnca Landes and Twitter at Yvonnca Landes. And don't forget to tell a friend about us. Until next time, Yvonnca signing off.